This is just going to be a super quick unscientific test of the Aputure 600D. At the studio that I normally shoot out of, we actually run a few Godox UL-150s and one Godox VL-300. But typically speaking, when we're at the studio, sometimes we're shooting photos and videos. So what I find a bit of a sticking point is that we can't switch around all the lightings for strobes after we shot the video. I would actually just much rather a smoother workflow, leave the lighting setup as is, and then just switch over and start taking some photos. But the trouble is with the Godox UL-150s, they're not powerful enough. I find myself actually having to ramp up the ISO or stopping down the aperture to like f7.1, which is killing the light. I typically stop down to f7.1 because I actually need that deep depth of field. I want most of it in focus from front to the back because most of the time we're photographing hair. So the Godox UL-150s were not really serving its purpose very well. They got us through a few jobs, but I had to boost up the ISO, which obviously degrades the image. In the past, we were just churning this type of work out quite quickly for social media, but in an effort to elevate the content even more so, we decided to upgrade some of the lighting, and I opted for the Aputure 600D. The Godox UL-150s, they actually run at 150 watts, whereas the Aputure 600D runs at 600 watts. But these levels stated is just the power that it's consuming to run. It's not necessarily stating how much output the light is giving you. So for the lighting test that I did, I actually had the Aputure 600D on a C stand with a Godox Octabox. After the fact, I switched out the UL-150 and then put the same softbox at the same distance shooting into the same infinity cove. It's not an exact measurement because I'm just going off the camera exposure settings, but it did actually read out 4 times more powerful. As you can see with the first shot, it was done with the Aputure 600D. The exposure settings are 1/200th of a second at f2.8 at ISO 100, and this is what the camera read as an average exposure. Moving over after I switched out the lights, remember keeping the same softbox at the same distance, at the same height on the same C stand. The exposure settings have now changed. It's still at 1/200th of a second at f2.8, but I'm now having to be at ISO 400. So based off the power consumption settings, it's actually producing 4 times more power, just as I would have expected and I would have liked, based off the fact that if I was to go from a 150 watt light to a 300, that would have been 1 stop, and then 300 to 600, that would be 2 stops. So likewise with the ISO settings, it does read and kind of correlate with that reading, from ISO 100 to 200, 200 to 400. So there's definitely a benefit from that power consumption because it is definitely that type of power output. I'm actually unaware about how to test for color accuracy when it comes to these lights. But what I will say though, is that looking at the exposure settings, the white balance has shifted quite drastically. Both lights are running at full power, but as you can see as I flick back and forth between the images, one looks more blue, one looks more yellow. They have a cooler and warmer tone to them. Remember, this is the same softbox, so it's shooting through the same diffusion sheets, but the color difference is there. Within Lightroom, I match the settings perfectly, so they're both going to be at 5600 Kelvin at +15 magenta, and you can clearly see as I flick back and forth, there is that color shift, and you can see that with your own eyes. Now, if I was to reset both images completely, you see now that the settings are 5500 Kelvin at +14 magenta, and this is actually going to be for the Aputure 600D. It looks very cool in terms of its light. Moving over to the other shot, it's now at 5200 Kelvin at +14 magenta. This to me, with my own eyes, no scientific tests here, it actually looks a bit more accurate to me. So as I said at the very beginning of this video, this is not a scientific test whatsoever. I'm just simply posting up these results for you to judge for yourself. And if you have any suggestions on how to run this test more scientifically and any devices that I should look into to purchase for these tests, let me know down in the comments below and I may revisit this test.